harmonica song, and I thought it was fitting to introduce the topic of what one might call positive stereotyping, and the idea of positive stereotyping can lead to uh, it can lead to some very dangerous things, such as romanticism, the romanticism. Wait, the romanticization. How do you say it? The romanticization. I can't say it. Welcome to Podcast IRC, conversations with Indigenous scholars to advance understandings and gain new knowledge. Hosted by the Indigenous Research Center at Salish Kootenai College. It can lead to romanticizing the way we think about ourselves, not even taking into account what other people think about natives, but more importantly, what we think of ourselves. And that's kind of what this idea of positive stereotyping is, where we embody some or embrace some stereotype that's not necessarily true, and then it becomes part of something that we often think of as ourselves. And one of those examples is something like natives are holistic thinkers or circular thinkers, which I don't know. I guess you could embrace that and you could tout it as a characteristic of yourself, but I don't necessarily think that's 100% true. What do you guys think?
Everybody thinks that if you're native, you have like a supernatural sense. You know what I'm saying?
So you're saying we don't?
I don't know. Do we?
Well,
I do.
I
use it every day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using it right now.
I knew what you were going to say.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like positive stereotypes kind of set the standard a little bit high sometimes.
But I think that's what makes them so dangerous, is because they're presented to us as like they're doing us a favor, and that's kind of always how it seems like. These types. I don't want to say it like that. These stereotypes can be embraced by Native people, and that's dangerous. It's not necessarily. I think Native people, for the most part, are used to some level of racism and bigotry and prejudice. But this stereotyping, I guess, I see that it's being embraced by Native people. And that's dangerous, because what it does is it substitutes a way of thinking with a foreign way of thought that's like predetermined.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like an example is like the stewards of the land, right? Because it's inherently not a negative. Like you're not going to say, well, are we not stewards of the land? And I'm like, well, I guess I'm just as much a steward as the next person, regardless of, but I don't somehow by openly saying you're a steward of the land, I feel like that's kind of it's like that's a hierarchy system. Like it's saying, well, now I have the land needs me to do something to maintain it, which is just false. It's completely false. The land is going to heal and fix itself regardless of what I do. And land will maintain itself and evolve without the influence of me, to some degree, like when I say, tribal people are stewards of the land, it's like, well, we're a product of it.
Like you were saying, Aaron, that's imposing a lot of control on us over nature, which nature is a pretty big thing, and it's a pretty big deal. And I don't think we got the rights to control any of those things. And I don't think we can. I mean, we can sure destroy it. We can sure we can sure have a hand in that, and we can also have a hand in fixing some things that were destroyed. But to be the in control of, yeah, I think we need to be more in control of ourselves first, rather than trying to control the the deforestation problem, which the problem is humans to begin with. So that's it never makes sense to me. In the maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, and maybe I'm way off base, but I like to think that we're just a part of the the whole function of the ecosystem, and we can choose to step out of that and become something else. But then I don't think that's really what I don't think that's what we're meant to be.
Do you think we can be in danger of overthinking that too? Overthinking that relationship?
Yeah. We just we have so many things that have infiltrated our world that that our ancestors had lived. We got so many of these other things going on that are so unlike the world that maybe we strive to be in. And yeah, if we continue to try to compare those two things, yeah, we it can get burnt out pretty quickly.
You should put your hand on the ground and then tell me what the earth wants us to fix.
Yeah. That's on a far end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Use your supernatural powers to read the earth, or like the Avatar, put your braid on the knapweed and speak to it and tell it to leave my garden.
Put your braid on the knapweed.
I think that it is sort of a dangerous thing, and I mean it certainly can affect the way we think about ourselves, and then we start limiting ourselves and put these ideas that don't need to be there. So there's that thing, but just like acknowledging that a stereotype comes from the outside, and so where that's coming from, kind of just putting it back there and thinking that, all right, a person who has like this idea, it's a positive idea. I mean, it's the trouble. Well, I mean, maybe kind of related to why it's so hard to get people to acknowledge that mascots are messed up. That they're like, no, I'm honoring you, right? So they're saying that this is coming from this positive place in them, that they're acknowledging something that is good or admirable or whatever it is. And so you can't get them to acknowledge that it's a bad thing. So it's hard to get rid of. Mm-hmm. It's a positive thing. And so they're not going to want to examine it. They're not going to want to let it go. And then kind of like, put your braid on the knapweed. And then when nothing happens in the eradication of an invasive species, it's your fault because you didn't do what you were supposed to. Like that's weird. I mean, it's just all about somebody else. It's all about somebody else. And it doesn't really have anything to do with the person that's being stereotyped. And so there's that level of it. And then of course, what you're saying about, a person is tired of being told they're terrible in every way. And now somebody's telling them that, oh, okay, this is acceptable. And so sure, they're not going to want to constantly get, beat down. So they'll stick to that thing that is acceptable. And it is. It has.
Well, I mean, it's like the earth. So we view it as like we got to fix climate change, but it's like, well, what if it's actually the earth trying to fix itself and get rid of us?
Whoa, dude. Whoa.
Let's heat this baby up and see how long they survive.
Let's just drown them and burn them, and then we can fix ourselves.
What's that, like the something in boiling water? You just turn it up really slowly. So the world is doing that to us.
Oh yeah. Like the frogs? Isn't that how you cook frogs?
I,
I don't.
it's a weird way of thinking, but it does fit with that positive stereotype, because it would be, well, if you think that traditional music is important, then you're going to be that really traditional person, and you can't listen to other kind of music. You can't play other kind of music. Like your idea with this guy and how he's thinking about, okay, Indian must be a good hunter. So he's gonna do it in a certain way. He's gonna track a deer or an elk like through the mountains with a bow and arrow. I mean, good luck with that. If you have a gun, aren't you gonna think that might give you a better chance of success? So
I can't remember who said this, but they said that tribal people, especially in the plains, are have a strong appeal to aesthetics. So like they enjoy fashion, they like the way things look, they like the way things sound. So regardless of if it's tribal or not, if it sounds good and it's palatable, it's going to be absorbed, into just the way tribal people think. They like cool things,
There's a social pressure, whatever group of people you hang out with, there's a social pressure to be like that and to reject all these other things. And that idea of traditionalism, I think, is a pretty powerful one. You get pressures to, like Camilla was saying, well, Guy, I want to be a traditional person, so I'm going to cancel my Netflix subscription and, maybe I'll just pray all night. I don't know. That's the kind of the pressure that I think some young people experience until they kind of learn that idea that we don't have to buy into these positive stereotypes where, like Aaron said, we're practical people. We do things that make us feel good. And the other things, the important ceremonial things, yeah, those have their place.
It's funny. It's funny to think of like when the horse came. I wonder if there was like some old Indian dude sitting in their TV going like, these dang kids, they don't respect tradition. They're riding around real fast. Like I try to picture like these gosh darn hoodlums and their horses.
When we went to winter camp, we walked.
Yeah.
We didn't ride those four-legged creatures.
What are they? Why are they in such a hurry?
Them in their metal arrowheads. Oh, fancy.
Oh, fancy.
I don't like
But
that's the way it was, and we liked it.
And it was the best way. And then before that, it was when the bow and arrow came, and they're like all these lazy kids with their bows and their arrows, and who wants to carry those around, Then you got to make a quiver.
Don't even know what a woolly mammoth is.
Yeah. Back in my day when we was hunting megafauna with my atlatl.
I think it's overly used by people on the outside looking in and saying, getting comments like, oh, you're pretty smart for a native person, or you're really responsible for a native person, so that automatically there's this idea like you're Native American, but you can also succeed in a Western world. That's amazing. You're automatically on a pedestal just because you can pay some bills.
Yeah. Or when they say, you speak really well. I've had people say that to me. Man, you speak really
Your
well.
English is impeccable.
So yeah, I went to school just as long as you did, like
kind of a edging into this new territory and oftentimes if you prescribe to the old ways, or you're thinking in those times, when you think about some of the people that you looked up to or that you had gotten teachings from, we have a hard time separating that idea of the stereotype, the positive one, that when I think, so yeah, some of the other common stereotypes, positive stereotypes, you hear it a lot, especially, working at the tribal college, being an instructor, and, at the interface of these young natives, you hear it all the time, native people learn differently. They're circular thinkers, and everything they think and all the things they do are in circles. And I would listen to that, when I was a student, and even today I still hear that, and I think, well, I think pretty linearly a lot. Not to say I don't think circularly, but I wouldn't embody that as something I do all the time. No, you're right. It becomes almost like a defense mechanism. You can see people putting up a fight, saying, "Well, I can't. I'm not going to do that task because it's not holistic. You're not thinking holistically."
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't think linearly, so I can't do that, or I will not do that. When, like you said, the diversity of thought and the diversity of thinking I think is inherent in all people. We might embrace one intuitively more than the other, but I think I think we all have the ability, and I think we do think many different ways. It's just like, if you think about just the raw definition of what linear thinking is, it just embraces logic and rules. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Logic and rules. And we do that every day.
We're adopting that, but to assume that that's how tribal people did that, and a lot of people will, like, they think that, like, this is actually in the horse world, this is a big thing. Like, native people have this touch with horses, and it's like, well, I mean, I've been bucked off horses, and that horse obviously didn't think I had a touch,
Well, you didn't put your braid on its mane.
You're right. I gotta plug in, man. I didn't plug in. I know I don't want to get too far out of hand, but as far as positive stereotypes, the horse one is a big one, because it's brought up all the time. Another one, of course, is living in two worlds. Man, the circular thinking thing. It's like, especially in academics, that living in two worlds and circular thought or holistic thought is like, it's pushed down to you. And as far as research, and when you're doing research, the leaders in Indigenous research methods that's the foundation. It's all based on this, what we're told is Indigenous philosophy. But the more and more you investigate, it's really like repackaged, like education pedagogy, right? Like, it's from the education vein. So it's all these, I don't know what you call them, like from the 80s, and
like a vein in a mine, like a gold
mine vein,
or
an ore vein
filled with education.
I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that this idea was actually, the way I understand how this whole thing started with this type of philosophy, it's basically non-Indian educators trying to understand native people, and then reinterpreting and repackaging the way native people think, and then selling it back to native people, and then we bought it.
Yep, that's exactly
we bought into it.
Yep.
That's the dangerous part. It's like, I'm a farmer. Marty comes to my farm, starts stealing oranges off of my farm, and then I see him on the side of the road, and then I buy the oranges back.
Yeah. So in a way, I think a lot of the literature out there can be, like you said, filled with some of these positive stereotypes that feel good. Like, you want to embrace them, You want them to be part of what you're doing, but maybe they're not quite situated in the reality of native life.
What I'm getting to is when I did my research about this thing called visual anthropology, and I got into the indigenous film side of things, it ultimately comes down to when a native person or an indigenous person creates this work of art, this film or documentary, it's an act of sovereignty. You're a tribal member, you're a native person, and you're expressing yourself, and ultimately it's can be argued anyway that it's a act of sovereignty.
Yes. So, virtue and morality, I think, are a couple big topics, especially when we're talking about positive stereotyping. I think it goes beyond just the idea of thinking circular, the idea of holism, living in two worlds, where it comes down to what kind of morals and values do we embrace
Yeah.
at on face value, and what morals and values do we embrace in our action.
Yeah, because you're right. There's a difference. There's a difference in you can feel like you can say, I have a kind heart, but I mean, I guess I got to take your word for it,
Yeah.
Because I don't know what that is. I don't know how does that look? It's just like saying I'm fast, It's like, well, run then. Let me see. It has to be said that we're not experts on this topic.
Yeah.
And that,
yes,
but we've run into them in research and in academics, and we recognize them as either speed bumps, hurdles, but I guess maybe I'm speaking for people when I shouldn't, when they probably see them as something good. But all I know is that if you try to apply a traditional tribal person's way of thinking to the preconditioned thinking of academics, it's not going to fit.
I guess maybe in what I've been saying, it does come across as like a negative thing, that trying to say that this is false, or this is wrong, or you can't do this. I mean, if it's useful, I mean, if that's a pattern that can be applied to a situation and it works, then that sounds good. But there's a lot of patterns that could be applied that might better fit other situations.
That what you just said there, Camia, is exactly, that's native thinking. Everything you just said was saying, if it fits and if it works, then I'll use it for that.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't, then I'll go with this.
Okay.
Camia is onto something.
There we go.
But it's also the idea of that the warrior themselves, the person with the accomplishment, can't brag upon the accomplishment himself. So he looks to others to do that for him. And typically it starts with his wife, then his sisters, his mothers, right? Mm-hmm. And so those people come in and they brag upon that person, because in a matrilineal society, it's always the women that will do that job for you. We always say we praise in several ways. There's singing, prayer, the physical act of praying, or praising. So you can do that with the wearing the adornments of the male, of the achiever, right? So the things he's bragging about, the person will wear those things. Mm-hmm. And it's a way of getting the community to brag upon it. Because remember, tribal people during this time, they believe that the greatest act of spiritual power is to test yourself in battle. So when you're tested in battle, that doesn't just mean you're a great warrior. It deems you spiritually potent. So people want to be
Mhm.
around that person or people, that group that are spiritually potent. Because we believe spiritual power to be like you can almost rub it, like you can touch it, right? My grandma tells stories about when men would come home from World War I or World War II. Her mom and dad would say, "Now go to the train station and touch them." And so they'd get off the train, and all the women and the kids would run up to those men who came home unharmed, and they would touch them to believe, because we believed them to be spiritually strong, right? So
the victory of the man, but really it's far deeper than that. It's like what Aaron was saying. It's more um, following through with this value of really being humble, and not just like today where you say you're humble on Facebook because because you want to brag about being humble. Facebook humble, social media humble, you say you're humble followed by all the things that you've accomplished. That's not really the way it works. But so it's a one piece of a larger puzzle of really a human need, right? We need to be recognized for the things we do, but we're not going to go out and say, I did these things, recognize me. It's part of this larger structure. But to describe it in very small terms is kind of difficult to do. But really, it's about, a value of humility and a value of just appeasing a natural human need, which is to be recognized for something good that you're doing.
Yeah.
And for some reason, in Indian country, this genre of celebration died like rapidly. We look at other forms of either ways of worship or celebration, and we were managed to keep elements of it, but this kind of form of like authentic forms of like recognizing deed, it just seemed to like die out. And so
no, but what it reminds me of is this idea that gets pushed on us, just like we talked about last week about this positive stereotypes, right? So you hear this, and you've heard it all, that natives, Indians, American Indians are metaphorical. We talk in metaphors, or we learn best by a metaphor. You heard that, right, Aaron?
Oh man.
Yeah. So really, I'm not sure where this idea comes from, because if you're a student of the language of your indigenous language, things are pretty straightforward. I think it's there's not a lot of talking around things, or painting this really vivid picture by using, is it adjectives? Am I using that right, Camia? Adjectives?
Yeah, that'll work.
So yeah, this idea of this metaphorical talk, I think it's, I don't know. I'm indifferent. I don't think it's the Disney version, the Pocahontas version, but I do think there's something in between. Certain experts in academia saying, this is how you got to do it. You have to talk in metaphor. You want to, in a way, they're saying you want to make people struggle to understand you, and if they want to know, they'll keep at it and keep on the struggle to know what you're trying to tell them. And I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily true.
Maybe there's a time and a place for the use of metaphors. And so I can think of an example like, I don't know, as a kid and the things that I was taught, or like when you're trying to teach your own kids, like you don't necessarily share, an exact like literal meaning of something, but put it in a perspective that they can understand. So if you're trying to teach like, the value of respecting other living beings and other creatures and stuff, you can relate it to a point where the kids sort of understand that moral that you're trying to convey. And I think, as someone who's also trying to convey kind of dense topics, like, related to what I study with owl habitat and trying to describe some of those things, like using metaphors can actually be a really valuable tool in some cases.
Right.
But by no means do all Native people use metaphors all the time, nor do we.
No.
Rely
And
on.
part of me thinks, yeah, it does make sense to use something from our culture to explain your research, because even if I just say to Indian people, the symbolism, or to Crow people specifically, the symbolism of the poles connects to the student experience. Like, even just like giving, if that was all I were to say, they at least would be like, oh, the poles, okay, that, there's connections there that happen. If you know there's symbolism in the teepee. Like, when I started using the metaphor, I didn't even know what all the only thing I knew about our teepee is that it had to be facing east, right? When you think about the complete process of that, metaphors in that sense are important. But when you think about me standing up with this image of this painted teepee with smoke coming out of it, and me, like, even just the way I change my voice, if I add any of that stuff to it, then it's cheesy. And it's almost how would you say, what's the word, exploitive?
Exploitive?
It's exploitive
Yeah.
at that point. And so trying to find that balance of using a metaphor and trying to find that balance, I think, is where I'm at right now that I'm ready to present on my research. It's like, oh crap, okay, I got to think about how this is actually gonna come across, and how am I gonna present it.
I don't know where there's the danger every time we put something to paper, every time we describe something, there's a danger in us misinterpreting, or people misinterpreting what we say, and us really just doing that to appease the thing that we're trying to achieve. In this case, trying to get an education, trying to get a degree. So to what extent do we just say, all right, yeah, I can do that, and people are going to smile, and they're going to love it. They're going to love the allegory. Is that right? What's an allegory? Camille, what's allegory?
And it's an extended metaphor. So yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Wow. Cameo.
I love we need like a index for
Right.
podcast.
So it sounds good, man. It sounds cool, when you can say, yeah, this thing I did is related to this very visually cultural thing. And since there's really not a lot of experts in academia right now, we can get away with a lot of stuff, man. We can just we can go
That's
crazy
the
on
danger
it.
of it. That's
Yeah.
that's the danger of it. These articles too that are written by good journalists, not just this one I'm talking about, but all kinds, they also perpetuate this idea of romanticism or metaphoric speak. Some of these articles are kind of littered with that, even if it's not something.
You just used the metaphor littered.
Yeah. I'm just
Keep
trying
going.
to sound assimilated.
Littered with allegory.
Littered with allegory and innuendo.
I understand and agree that there is some danger in what we're talking about right now, but in what case would it be justified? And I'm trying to think for Selena's example that she shared. I mean, first it connected her back in, I think, a profound and important way, right? And then also it might lead to other folks reconnecting. I don't know. Is that one justification?
I mean, I keep thinking about like the use of a metaphor, and what we're trying to do is explain what something means, like the significance of it. So like if you point to something and you say, there it is, a person can look at whatever that is and say, okay, yeah, that is. But what do I do with it? Or what does it mean? What's the importance? And so then you can compare it to something else. And I think that will supply that. It gives you a perspective, right? A way to understand whatever the meaning is. So, I mean, yeah, it can be misinterpreted or it can be misapplied, but it does have a use. It can be it can be the thing that will allow you to understand something. I mean, and there is this wealth of knowledge, and you're trying to present it to somebody in a way that they can get something out of it. So just kind of like, all right, here, just look at this thing. Think of a teepee. A teepee is something you can imagine. It's concrete. It is familiar, and so then, all right, this is how this research, this is how these pieces of information would fit into that model. It can be, kind of this tool to understand, right? Overuse or misuse, the idea that that's what you have to do, that bothers me because it doesn't seem to be authentic anymore. It's like, okay, play a part, do this thing not in the service
Check a
of
box.
helping somebody. Yeah. Do this because I expect you to do this, not do this because it's going to help me understand. Mm-hmm. I already understand what I want to, or my perspective is that I see you in a certain way. So now you have to do this to affirm that. And it doesn't have anything to do with what you're trying to say.
But it seems like it has to be something that is familiar to the audience in which you're addressing it to. Yeah. And I think that's where it seems, I seem to get lost. I can't find a reason why some things are described in a deeply indigenous way when maybe the intended audience doesn't quite, or maybe I don't quite get this indigenous concept that they're talking about, or maybe that connection is lacking. I think that's where I kind of start getting an issue, when it seems like it's something I know about, but not really. So how useful is it? But then again, you can't meet everybody's expectations, I guess. Otherwise, what are you going to do, Cripes? We can't have a metaphor to meet a global audience.
Mm-hmm. Or like trying to translate in millions of different languages.
But brings up another metaphor that often gets used a lot, and that the metaphor of a circle, right? I mean, we've all heard this. I was just diving into some research recently on the idea of the talking circle, trying to trace back to where this idea first started coming from. But a lot of the text you read, reference natives as circular thinkers, kind of what we talked about last time, but also talking about the circle as being this really powerful symbol that's a reoccurring theme in indigenous worldview. So what is it? What is it, man? What is this fascination with the circle?
It's round. Circles roll.
It's round.
It's wholeness.
Infinity.
It's in wholeness. It's infinity. Yeah.
Oh no, here we go.
Eternity.
Here we
Yeah.
go. To be honest, I don't think about it all that much. Like when I do my research, I feel like I just do my work. I'm not sitting there with a conscious decision to say, like, let's make sure that this research is circular or this research is holistic. I just kind of I feel like I ask the question, I test the question, and then I give you my results. Regardless of how that, I don't feel like it's, at least, I don't know. I don't want to feel like it's a circle or there's this conscious decision to do that. I don't know, because
it's weird, man. I know.
Man, it's fake, man. About this stuff, as soon as you go to you're trying to boil it down and get to the truth, and you say something simple like that. You're out in nature and you're looking for a circle. Well, automatically you're, like Selena said, your voice even changes. You go out in nature alone and you look around. What do you see? A lot of irregular shapes and things that don't have symmetry, but there is symmetry that does exist. But
Yet.
where is the perfect circle? Where is this circle of life my grandfather talks about? There it is. Look in the sky. The sun comes every day. Every morning the sun says good morning. And it's a perfect circle every time. You can trust that. 24 hours. Every 24 hours we'll see the sun again.
Keep going, man. Keep going. This is good.
I have a thought then. So the circle does get brought up a lot, right? Like Marty's saying, you're saying, it does get brought up a lot.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. But which culture doesn't acknowledge the circle?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, probably every language has a word for a circle. Right?
Yeah.
We could probably look into that.
Probably.
Yeah. I don't know.
We could look into that. Let's Wikipedia that. Let's start a Wikipedia page for the circle. That's probably one. Yeah, I don't want to do that.
But like, it's all about like the relations, right? Like everything on that, like a circle can't really escape itself on a circle, and so everything is all in that together. And yeah, I don't know. That's all I say. Out.
If we thought like that, that'd be exhausting. All things are connected. Oh man! I'm trying to do this podcast, and it's going to have this detrimental effect on my children in the future. And what am I? If we thought like that all the time, just imagine the overload we'd have of everything's connected. Well, we can acknowledge that,
must be why my brain hurts.
And I think the circle has that same connotation. Like, oh man, we got to hear about the circle again.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about a circle no more. Yeah, it's easy. It's an easy thing to say, that this represents a circle, or I'm going to put it in a circle. It's easy to associate that with the modern conception of indigenous thought these days. But I challenge that, and I think, well, no, I don't. Maybe, but I don't think so. I think there's some pretty straightforward thinking. I think there's some research results that we can gain that are fairly straightforward.
So what would be the backlash for saying this in the world of indigenous research, by us saying that maybe this whole circle idea is kind of a crock? All right. I get it. What would does that hurt Indian research? Indigenous research, sorry. Does that hurt? So does the critique of this idea hurt indigenous research as a discipline, not as a philosophy, but as a discipline?
Right.
Because I would say indigenous research method in that form is kind of marketable.
It is.
Very much. Mm-hmm.
It's branded.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. It is branded.
I said it first.
Disclaimer. I think criticism and being a hater are two different things.
Yes.
Right. And
let's make that clear.
I'm not a hater on anyone trying to further the discipline of indigenous research. But I do, when you said maybe it doesn't have to be peer reviewed, I think it should. I think anything I touch. Yeah, anything I touch needs to be looked at by people that I respect and I'm willing to take their criticism. But as far as like asking this question, it's really like, because I'm a believer, man. Like I believe in indigenous perspectives, right? But I want to do it right. I don't have the answer. Yeah. I don't have, I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I would like to challenge the existing idea. Because if you challenge it and it comes out on the other side, then it's right. Then I'm willing to say, all right, whatever, I'll go with it. Then it is. Just like we were talking about this telling of these deeds, these guys would tell these deeds, but they would only tell deeds that could be corroborated. Somebody has to say, someone had to have said, yeah, I saw him. I saw this
Yeah.
happen, or I saw her do that. You don't just talk about something. I was alone in a coulee, and, it's like nobody cares then,
Yeah.
And really
Right.
back then they were pretty harsh about this stuff. They're like, nobody saw it. You can't use it,
Yes.
So I would want my research to kind of have the same effect. So that's why when these ideas of the talking circle, the medicine wheel, all of this stuff come up, I'm not against them. They seem to be built on flimsy foundations, and I could be wrong. But
I think my motivation is to help other Indian students be able to feel comfortable using their ways of knowing, or even that term ways of knowing sounds romanticized, but just to be able to teach from our perspective and have it just be that's they're without romanticism, without doubt, without I don't know, all this stuff that
exploitation.
Exploitation. Just to be able to talk about it and teach it and get excited about it, and not have to have all these layers of, I'm going to say the word colonialism on it, because that's what half of this stuff is shame around that. Like, I don't know.
Right.
And I'm probably sound a little Amish right now, but that's my motivation, is so that I can teach it. So I can teach how to research from our perspectives, and for it to be just to be.
Yeah. Now, did you say Amish or Amish?
I almost said it. I almost said that.
Aim-ish.
Oh, AIM.
Yeah, American Indian Movement.
Okay, let's be clear
As
on
an
that.
acronym.
I don't know if you got a desire to
I got confused.
churn your own butter.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That was my prior accent.
We're always in this transition stage of trying to figure this out. So to think we're in some final stage, like we've got it figured out, that'd be crazy to say that. So things are always kind of in flux, and I think I'm trying to understand all this stuff that these people did back in the 80s and 90s, who really did a lot of hard work, to bring back this cultural way that we can now talk about and dog on a little bit. I'm just kidding, but that was important work. That was important work to help us to advance even further. So if we're not continuing to challenge ourselves and to challenge our peers to be better, with that idea of, just like in this Siyudlam, to acknowledge those are doing good work, to pull those ones up that maybe need some help, to be unafraid, to be brave enough to challenge each other. That's where the work's got to get. It has to be done.
Man, I'm with Selena as still learning and educating myself about this kind of stuff. I feel like it's very important to know the basics, and to just know, to be able to teach it and to learn it. And then there comes another layer of identifying what's cliche, and what's exploiting it. I feel like there's another level of that. And I feel like sometimes like insecure when I'm like hearing you guys talk, and I'm like, oh man, I'm such an amateur. I'm such a rookie. What do they mean? No. But then at the same time, it just gets me going. And it's like, I'm learning it and being able to identify the difference of what's authentic and what's really just marketing. And
cycling over my head is it, and I guess it's reflected in our mission and what we're trying to do with the centers. We're trying to advance our understanding. We're not trying to get to the point of where we will fully understand. And if anything, I think that if we're striving for that full, perfect, like, I don't know, idealistic level of understanding, it's almost like selfish. So I think we're always constantly going to be in this like learning mode, no matter where we're at.
Yeah.
So that's my motivation. Is I fully admit I'm definitely not an expert on any of this stuff, and it's fun to learn. It's fun to be critiqued and tested, and have that check-in and feedback and stuff. But yeah, I don't think that there's this like magical full enlightenment that we're striving for. It's just advancing our understanding.
I would say in the past, Indigenous research has always been to justify Indigenous views in research. So it was the audience was the non-Indian. That's always, it
Mhm.
always seems to be that way.
Mhm.
I think for what we're doing and the
Yeah.
questions we're asking, it's for Indian people researching Indian ideas and topics for Indian people. So it's a different kind of question.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
some of those methodologies won't work because the audience is different.
Yeah.
And so I think what Sarah's saying, it actually is kind of the foundation of it. It's this idea that we're willing to ask the question, you know. I don't think that question's ever really been asked by Indian people. It's like, how do we study ourselves, you know?
So this idea of questioning the way Indigenous research has begun, or ideas about all these different metaphors of Native people, just doing the research itself, we're kind of just figuring out what's real or what's true or what's can apply for some people and not some other tribe, you know.
Gosh, I feel like I'm supposed to say something like extraordinary, and all I have is how important these conversations are to keep having. I think Sarah or Camia, one of them, said it very well in just continuing to have these conversations, finding the balance and doing them appropriately so that we can just keep contributing to this field of Indigenous research.
Thank you for joining us on this episode. And to learn more, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at IRCSKC. You can find us also on Facebook and YouTube by searching SKC Indigenous Research Center. You can also visit our website at irc.skc.edu. Don't forget to join us next time as we continue our discussions on Indigenous research, Indigenous research methodologies, and Indigenous worldviews.